Hi everyone, my name's Jordan and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do a video full of nonfiction recommendations. I have been hinting that I was going to do this video for quite a while and am finally committed to doing it. I will preface by saying that most of these have to do with America, so if you're not American or not interested in American politics and history, I would say this video is not for you. Most of the nonfiction I've read in the past few years has been about social justice and inequalities in America and things along those lines. So all of these books fall within that realm of books to help educate you on the history of America and America today and things you can do to help. Realized I forgot to take off my glasses, so sorry if there was a glare for the beginning of this video. Continuing on, let's just go ahead and get right into the recommendations. The first book is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. This book talks about the history and origins of the United States and how that has affected the legal justice system today. Specifically, it talks about slavery and how we got from slavery to mass incarceration. America loves to preach about how we are finally all into equality and everyone's equal in the US, like it's a place for everyone to start fresh, blah blah blah. But this book kind of shows that that isn't necessarily the case. Once Jim Crow ended and segregation ended, then mass incarceration began. Because in the Constitution, there's an amendment that says that slavery is illegal unless in the case of being in jail or breaking the law or whatever. I don't know the exact wording. So this book kind of goes into detail about the inequalities in the justice system, the inequalities in the prison industrial complex, and it also goes into the private owned prisons, the money involved, the way police are involved, basically just how the justice system and policing in the US stems from slavery and how it impacts America today and the inequalities that many Black and brown people still face every single day. So this book was very instrumental in teaching me about the prison system in the US. Next up is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. Ibram X. Kendi is one of my favorite nonfiction authors. His books are always very informative, very helpful in my learning and educating myself. This book is exactly what the title says. It basically teaches you what you can do in your day-to-day life to become anti-racist, because it's not enough to just be not racist. You have to actively be fighting racism and being anti-racist, teaching your children about racism and all of the history. So this book kind of helps you. It breaks it down into different sections, and it was very helpful for me. Next up, I have Hood Feminism by Mickey Kendall. This book was instrumental in teaching me about intersectionality and how you cannot have activism for one thing without acknowledging the whole scope. So gender, class, race, disabilities, all of those, that's not all of them, there's a very long list, but all of these things tie together. So you are not just one identity. No one is just one identity. All of your identities tie together to create who you are. And America has different prejudices, morally and in the laws, codified into law, that attack a lot of these individual identities. So those can compound depending on who you are. So this book really taught me that, but it also focuses a lot on the inequalities women face in different communities and the ways in which the US government has failed and still fails women of color. So this book was very important to me and very informative, and I highly recommend it. Next up, I have The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. This book focuses on basically the US as a map, and it talks a lot about redlining and the ways in which America has held people of color back from getting housing, from having communities with resources, and things along those lines. And it really focuses on redlining. It focuses on how the US government has drawn lines around areas where people of color live and basically only allowed them to live there. And this still happens today. It's not in law, it's not codified into law, but through manipulation of the laws, they are able to create these areas, and these areas don't get the same funding, they don't get the same community establishments, and there's food deserts and things, a lot of things, and it kind of talks about the history of redlining and how it's still happening today and how it is still affecting today's generations, because I mean, redlining was not that long ago, and gerrymandering and stuff still is going on. So it just kind of breaks all of that down and teaches you about the history of it, why it is, and how it's still affecting people today. Next is probably my favorite book on this list. I say favorite loosely because it's kind of hard to have a favorite when it's books like this, but this one was probably the most enjoyable read for me, in terms of, maybe enjoyable's the wrong word, because none of these are incredibly enjoyable. They're all about very dark, sad, scary, informative topics. But this one was probably the one that taught me the most, probably because it's one of the first ones on this list I read. And that is Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi, another one by him. He also was the one that wrote How to Be an Antiracist. This book really is a history book. It starts with the first ship of enslaved people that arrived in North America and goes from there to modern day. It just talks about all of the things that we were not taught in school. So it just kind of breaks down how this led to this, led to this, led to this, led to today. And I feel like that very linear way of presenting this history was very helpful for me. And it also uses things that we did learn in school as points of reference. So, like, we did learn about a lot of this in school, but we didn't learn about the other side of it. So it kind of like shows that other side. And I think that it was so informative. I love this book. I will probably reread it. I think that it really does help highlight the inequalities that are in America and why we have those. Like, what started it? How did it proceed? And how is it still going? I just think Ibram X. Kendi does such a phenomenal job of presenting the facts as facts while also showing you, like, this is the inhumanity that America has enacted on people of color. And this book really does focus a lot on Black people, because it focuses on slavery, but it does tie in some of the other marginalized communities such as Native Americans and etc. So this book is incredible. Next up, I have Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. This book I think I've talked about before on this channel. This book is phenomenal. Basically, Isabel Wilkerson takes two predominant caste systems in history, being the one in India and the one in Nazi Germany, and compares it to the caste system America created. She really goes into the nuances and intricacies of those two caste systems in those other countries, how they operated, how they formed, how they kept the lower classes lower. They talked a lot about how it's like the bloodline thing, like if you are born into it, you stay in it kind of thing, and how that is similar to America. And it also talks about how Nazi Germany used a lot of America's caste systems as influence for their own. It explains how Nazi Germany used segregation and slavery and things as ways to influence what laws they were going to make against the Jewish peoples. And it's really harrowing to read. I didn't know about Nazi Germany using America as an influence. It was not shocking, but still something that it just kind of shook me. It really goes into the history. Again, most of these are historical. They start with history and how it has influenced today. And it really does start with how enslaving people led to us creating this caste system of peoples that you cannot grow out of. We are slowly seeing change today, but it is slow. It talks about like the one drop rule, where if you have any history of having enslaved people in your family, then you are enslaved. And it talks about it being from the mother's line, not from the father's. It just goes into all of those intricacies and how it compares to these caste systems that in school we are taught are horrific, awful things. But we are not taught that America basically has the same type of system. So it's just a very interesting point of view, because thinking about it before I read this book, I would have never said America had caste systems. I definitely acknowledged that there were inequalities, but I wouldn't have qualified it as a caste system, purely because I don't think I knew enough about previous caste systems in the world to have an educated opinion on it. But this book really did show me that, and did show like how awful America has been. Next up is Disability Visibility. This book is a collection of essays, so it has many authors. And it is just talking about people with disabilities and how they have to survive in America, where their humanity is in question. This book was very eye-opening for me, because I frankly had not read a whole lot about the disabled community, but I follow a few people with chronic illness and disabilities on Instagram, and Autumn over on Instagram always talks about this book. I'll link her page down below. But she always was talking about this book, and so I decided to look into it. It is very good, but also very, again, eye-opening. There's a lot in there that I just didn't know. It talks about how not all disabilities are visible. You may not know that somebody has a disability, but it also talks about the very visible disabilities and the ways in which those people are treated differently, the ways in which accessibility in general for anyone is so inaccessible. So it's just a really, really great book, especially if you don't know a whole lot about the disabled community. I highly recommend you read this and other works about people with disabilities, just to educate yourself on what we, meaning me and other people that are able-bodied, can be doing to help the disabled community, because they deserve to live and be happy just as much as anyone else. Next up, I have 2 books by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz, and these are my last 2 on the list. The first one is Not a Nation of Immigrants. This talks about settler colonialism and how America has always preached that they are a nation of immigrants, but in fact they have been very against immigration from the beginning. It's a really interesting book because it doesn't talk about just one group. It talks about all the different groups that America has excluded from immigrating to their country. And it is, again, eye-opening, things I didn't know, which is why I read these books. I read these books because I don't know the content. I don't know a lot of the history that I wasn't taught in school. We are taught a very polished version of history, and I think that's unfair. So I took it upon myself to educate myself, and that's why I'm reading these. So this book really showed me that while America prides themselves on being this place where we accept immigration, we accept people, this is where you can come to get a fresh start in this equal America, how that's kind of a fairy tale. We, throughout history and even today, only allow the certain people, certain immigrants. We do not allow other immigrants. We make it as hard as possible for some immigrants. So it just kind of talks about the history of that and current day. And then the other book by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz is An Indigenous People's History of the United States. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a history of the United States that focuses on how Indigenous peoples have been treated from the first time Europeans landed here, and to the ways in which their land was stolen. There was an attempt to completely ethnically cleanse all Native Americans, and how even today they are some of the most underrepresented and underprivileged groups of people in the United States. It is, again, wild, some of the stuff that is in this. Not surprising after my journey of educating myself about American history, but still, again, stuff we are not really taught about. And it's just so sad and awful. These books are not meant to bring you down. These books are not meant to be disheartening. These books are meant to cause change. These books are meant to, the first step in creating the change you want to see is educating yourself and knowing what needs to be changed. So these books have really helped show me a lot of the things in America that are still going on today that needs to be changed, and it gives context for why we've gotten to this point, like what has led to this point. And that is the first step. And then you have to go out there and make that change. So I highly recommend that you check out some of these books, whether you read nonfiction or not. A lot of these have audiobooks that you can put your headphones in and listen to. They're very important to read. And a lot of the audiobooks are actually very good because a lot of the times the author is the one reading it. This list is not exhaustive. This book is not all of the best nonfiction books. These are just some that I felt were very important to talk about here, but I've read many more and hope to still keep reading many more. And I highly recommend that you all do the same. It is very important, especially in America right now, to read books about the history of America. I can't speak to other countries. I don't know enough about other countries, so if you're from another country, you know best. But in America, it is very important right now that we read these books, that we educate ourselves on these topics, because it's not going away, and it's not made up, and it is so important. So please, please read some of these books. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know down below what are some more nonfiction books that I should read. I have a goal this year of reading 12 nonfiction books, and I think I'm at 6. So I'm on track to read 12, but help me pick what some of the next ones I read are down below. They do not have to be social justice books. They don't have to be American history. I do read some memoirs and stuff from time to time. These are just the ones I gravitate towards because I find them very important. But it is not an exclusivity thing. I will read any nonfiction, really. So let me know down below what are some nonfiction books you think I should check out. If you're really liking my content, please hit the notification bell to be notified anytime I post a new video. Thank you guys for watching. Of course, your support means the world to me, and until next time, thanks.